What if I told you a Vietnamese army outnumbered 5-1, completely destroyed a massive Chinese invasion force without even fighting them head-on? Not with walls, not with superior weapons, but with silence and shadows and empty villages where even the dogs had vanished. This is the untold story of how a brilliant war strategy called the Empty Fort Plan lured a mighty army into the jaws of death. The year is 1427, northern Vietnam. For over a decade, the Vietnamese had fought tooth and nail to drive out the Ming dynasty. But just when victory seemed close, the skies darkened again. From the mountains of southern China, two colossal Ming armies began marching south. One, led by the veteran general Liu Sheng, crossed the rugged passes of Guangxi, leading over 100,000 troops. Another, under Muan, advanced from Yunnan, ready to strike from the west. Their goal, to crush the Vietnamese resistance, to break the siege at Shuangyang, a Ming stronghold barely holding on, and to drag Vietnam back under the yoke of imperial rule. To anyone watching, it looked hopeless. But then something strange happened. As Liu Sheng's army descended into Vietnamese territory, they found no resistance, no scouts, no enemy formations, just silence. Villages were abandoned, crops left unharvested, bridges strangely unguarded, roads wide open. It felt too easy. And that was exactly what Liu, the leader of the Vietnamese rebels, wanted them to think. You see, this wasn't carelessness. This was a trap. A brilliant, deadly trap. Liu and his generals, Nguyen Tri Tron Guen Han, Lu Nanu, had studied the terrain, the psychology of their enemies, and they knew the Ming commanders were arrogant. They expected the Vietnamese to panic, to scatter, to fight in desperation. So instead, they vanished. They gave the Ming army an illusion of dominance, lured them deep into unfamiliar mountainous terrain, stretched their supply lines, cut off their communications, and once the Ming were far enough in, the jaws closed fast. Step by step, the enemy was being led. And just when Liu Sheng believed he was closing in on victory, he was already surrounded. Here's what makes this chilling. The Ming didn't even realize they were being hunted. They were still marching forward, still laughing at the cowardly Vietnamese who dared not fight them head-on. But a few of their scouts, they started disappearing. Then the terrain changed, the valleys narrowed, the jungle pressed in, the roads got slick with sudden rains, almost unnatural. And when the first Ming supply line vanished, whispers of doubt began, but it was already too late. The jaws were closing fast. He marched into the valley, a general. He never walked out again. The moment came. Chilong Valley, a place that seemed calm, quiet, even beautiful. But to the Vietnamese, it was a blade shaped by mountains, sharpened by rivers, hidden in fog, and the enemy was walking straight into it. On October 10th, 1427, Liu Sheng led his column deeper into Chilong. Over 30,000 soldiers, armored and confident, drums beating, flags flying, and not a single clue that death was already watching. Suddenly, the vanguard stopped. The road had narrowed, dense bamboo forest on both sides. Ahead, just a shallow stream glistening under a gray sky. It looked peaceful, too peaceful. Then a scream, one arrow, then dozens, then hundreds. From the trees, from the rocks, from the mist, the Vietnamese unleashed hell. It wasn't a battle. It was a slaughter. Liu's forces were stretched out, trapped between narrow paths. Heavy cavalry couldn't move. Rear units couldn't push forward. They were stuck. And the jungle exploded. Liu's soldiers attacked with perfect timing. From above, from behind, from both flanks. Spears, arrows, fire, sharpened bamboo spikes hidden in mud. Ming's soldiers slipped, screamed, vanished beneath waters now red with blood, and in the chaos, Liu was still alive. He shouted, tried to rally, ordered his elite guard to break out, and the Vietnamese led him. They opened a gap just wide enough. He charged straight into a trap. From the ridge above, Leet waited. The moment Luen entered the clearing, the order was given. In seconds, he was hit. His horse collapsed. He fell, tried to rise too late. A single strike, and the head of the mighty general rolled in the mud of Chiang. Silence, then panic. The Ming army collapsed, leaderless, shattered. Thousands fled. Many didn't make it. Others dropped weapons and begged for mercy. And the Vietnamese they didn't chase. They just stood there, letting silence speak. But the war wasn't over because far away, Mushing's army was still marching, and another trap was waiting. By the time they arrived, the war had already ended for them. When news of Liu Sheng's death reached the Second Ming Army, commanded by General Mushin, it hit like a thunderclap. He hesitated, recalculated, but it was too late. His army, tens of thousands strong, was already deep inside Vietnamese territory. Supplies were thinning, maps unreliable, villagers gone, and the jungle was watching. The attacks didn't come all at once. They came slowly, deliberately. Snipers in trees, spikes in riverbeds, ambushes that looked like retreats. The Vietnamese weren't just fighting, they were unraveling the Ming from within. And worse, Muyan Tree struck again. Letters slipped into Ming camps. Beautiful, poetic, devastating. They told of Liu Sheng's death, of surrender, of mercy. Some Ming officers believed it. They deserted. Some disobeyed orders, others froze. And all around them, the jungle kept closing in. Then came the final blow. When Muang finally reached Huangzhong, it was on fire. Because the Vietnamese had already taken it, with tunnels, sabotage, and a night assault that ended in chaos. The last hope was gone. And then came the message: surrender or die. Mu Shang surrendered. Tens of thousands of Ming soldiers laid down their weapons, not because they were weak, but because they had been outthought, outmoved, outfought by a country half their size. It was a war of brains, of deception, of psychology, more than swords and spears. Historians call it the perfect example of asymmetric warfare. A small nation defeating a massive empire with cunning and patience. Every ambush, every trap, every silent village was a piece of a deadly puzzle that the Ming could never solve.
And when you read about it in textbooks, it sounds impossible. How could a small Vietnamese force annihilate tens of thousands of Ming soldiers? But the valley remembers, the hills remember, and the silence speaks. So next time you hear about overwhelming odds, remember this: clever strategy can turn giants into shadows. The Vietnamese didn't just fight, they orchestrated a masterpiece. A deadly, silent, perfect masterpiece. And that, my friends, is the story of the Battle of Chi Lung Valley, where silence, patience, and cunning conquered might. And a small nation wrote its name in history forever.